This is 27-year-old Sydney Gnome S. facing a domestic violence charge in Pike, Mississippi. Southern District Judge Aubrey Rhymes was presiding over the hearing. Gnome initially seemed to be in a good mood as he reviewed some papers. However, an altercation with a court officer agitated him. Gnome was then asked to sign some papers, which the officer presented to Judge Rhymes. However, Gnome was not ready to rest his case. He got into a heated argument with the judge, who promptly asked the officer to remove the defendant from court. This is when things got crazy. First, Gnome grabbed a stack of papers and threw it at Judge Rhymes. The officer tried to subdue him, but Anue managed to overpower her. He then threw a telephone at the judge. This is when Judge Rhymes decided to take matters into his own hands. As Gnome threw more paper at him, the judge single-handedly pinned the defendant to the table. Eventually, backup arrived. Gnome was restrained and removed from the courtroom. Gnome faced additional charges of contempt of court and served 48 hours in prison, while a judge literally took justice into his own hands. What happens when a defendant flies towards a judge coine? With that history, in accordance with the laws of like, in the case of 30-year-old CRA Wren, who is facing charges of attempted battery in Las Vegas, Nevada. Redden was arrested after he allegedly attacked his brother-in-law with a baseball bat. Redden pleaded guilty and faced a possible sentence of 1 to 4 years in prison. At his sentencing, Redden had a Kalan-Matarofa exchange with Judge Mary Cahus. Based on my history, I feel that, I should be, sent to prison for a second time. You, at your criminal history, have you looked at your criminal history? Actually, I looked at it. I mean, you lived it, I suppose. Josh Hoos. Then Wren of his criminal history: 3 felonies, a gross, 9 misdemeanors, multiple DVs. Got a lot going on. Sir, battery on a protected person, robberies, attempt home invasion. Wren, who struggled with mental health issues like schizophrenia and bipolar disorder, tried to convince Judge Huss that he deserved a second chance, applying it to my personality and having me at that moment in those instances, and just trying to learn from my mistakes, and I feel like I should be sent to prison. But if it is appropriate for you, then you have to do what you have to do. But I figure that if I am in a better place in my life. I am not doing drugs. I am not out there committing crimes now, and I feel like I should give a shot. The judge was having none of it. I appreciate that, but I think it is time that he get a taste of something else, because I just go in. With that history, this is when the defendant nuts. I just go in. With that history, Rien launched over the courtroom bench and headed straight for Judge Huss. Eventually, deputies were able to restrain music. There was sheer chaos in the courtroom as alarms went off and people started calling for help. Affirmative medical is requested. Judges Chambers, be advised. 5115S got a big laceration to his head. Judge heading to the wall, and I got an inmate flaying up here. That's going to be a positive transport to a UFC photo. I am going to need a biohazard cleanup for a lot of blood on floor. Thankfully, Judge Hoost didn't suffer any serious injuries. However, it was later revealed that Reen had punched her several times and pulled out parts of her hair, smashed into the wall. He was on me, and then I was being pulled down. I had closed my eyes. I was trying to protect my face and my head. I just remember saying, help somebody get them off. In my head I was completely defenseless. He was so determined and so violent. It was, scary. I didn't think I was going to get out of there, but one marshal was not so lucky. He was hospitalized and needed 25 stitches after suffering a forehead injury as well as a dislocated shoulder, and faced 13 new charges for the attack on Judge Huss, including attempted murder, battery, and extortion by threat. Yuri being charged with Count 1, attempt murder victim, 60 years of age or older, a felony count of battery on a protected person resulting in substantial bodily harm victim, 60 years of age or older, a felony. Redden later pleaded guilty but mentally ill to those charges, while Dioa Redden took out his anger on an unlucky judge. Challenges a lawyer to a fight. If you want to fight, let us go out back. And I'll just beat your ass. We head to the Moore Justice Center in Brevard County, Florida, where public defender Andrew Weinstock and his client are appearing before Judge John Murphy. Since the court already had a packed schedule, Judge Murphy wanted the defendant to waive his right to a fast trial. All right, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? I am not waiting. If you want to set it for trial, set it for trial. All right, if you want to set it for duet, set for duet. I am not ringing any case. Tensions in the courtroom reached an all-time high when public defender Weinstock refused to budge. If I had a rock, I would throw it at you right now. Stop pissing me off. Just sit down. ILL. Take care of it. I do on it. Need your help. Sit down. You know what? I am the public defender. I have a right to be here, and I have a right to stand, represent C moments earlier. Weinstock had a confrontation with Judge Murphy while representing another client, this Mr. Rodriguez public defender. What do you want to do at S? Going to expire before I can get him in. So not my emergency question. You want to set it for trial? You can set it for trial. If you want to set it for trial, instead, I am not waiving that S. If the question is, am I waiving answer, is just say it, okay. I am not waiving. I do you and care. I do you and care either. I am not. I just need to set it for a date. However, what Judge Murphy suggested next was never heard of in a courtroom before. If you want to fight, let us go out back, and I allow just to beat your ass incredibly, both Weinstock and Judge Murphy went to the back of the courtroom and actually had a physical altercation. He backed me up. He had me pinned to the wall with his right arm. And, he brought his left hand back in a fist. Then he punched me in the face, hitting me here, which is my lower right jaw, and I was absolutely shocked by after a while. Judge Murphy returned to the courtroom alone. I will catch my breath eventually. Man, I am an old man later. The incident was investigated by Florida's Judicial Qualifications Commission, and Judge Murphy was charged with misconduct. The case eventually reached the Supreme Court, which ordered Judge Murphy to be immediately suspended and permanently removed from his post. Weinstock later resigned from his position at the public defender's office, while Judge John Murphy ruined his career by fighting a lawyer. How does it compare to throwing a backpack at the judge? We head to Cleveland, Ohio, to the Cleveland Municipal Court, where Judge Marilyn Cassidy is overseeing proceedings. Defendant June Carson was in court today for a misdemeanor trespassing charge. Carson made his way to the podium alone, carrying a black backpack. Are you representing, sir, attorney? He have the right to an attorney, Judge. Cassidy delayed the hearing, so Carson could hire a lawyer, but the defendant had other ideas, I don't think. Continue, see you on the point, sir. That's fine. This is where things took a wild music. Attorney, after his protests were ignored, Carson cocked his backpack and hurled it towards the judge, narrowly missing her. Kind of had a concern was, when that backpack was coming at me, I wasn't sure if there was something that was going to come after that. I didn't know if he threw that and then was going to pull a weapon or some other thing, Judge. Cassidy quickly took cover and hit the panic button under her desk to alert security. Meanwhile, Carson punched public defender David Iden Miller, who wasn't even involved in his case and just happened to be there. Carson was then tackled by a man who was sitting in the gallery. His court officers rushed to help. We secured the right arm and the left arm. We cuffed them and got him up and out of here, all on a day's work. All on a day's work. Carson was cuffed and hauled out of the courtroom. He was later charged with contempt of court and sentenced to 30 days in jail, while June Carson's poor aim resulted in a judge escaping unhurt. What happens when a judge has to physically restrain a convict? Chase S. Right. Now, like in the case of Jacob Larson, who was in a Jackson County court for violating a personal protection order, Judge John McBain, known for his no-nonsense conduct, presided over the hearing a year ago. Judge McBain had signed off on a personal protection order after Larson was accused of stalking a classmate, Erie, out there hanging out at her place of employment. Putting things all over her car. Her managers have got to come in there and ask. Leave. The terrified victim appeared in court and narrated her ordeal. I don't even know him, so I just don't understand how he's like so obsessed and like keeps messaging me. I have messages from October 9th after we got out of the court, and then I have some from the 23rd. However, Layson blames the woman for his actions. She est instigating that. Though, why do you feel that she est instigating? 'Cause she posting pictures and whatnot directed to me. I'm no off like lotta makeup, hair done, all that stuff, like the full nine. She Suno sub tweeting me and whatnot on Twitter. Is that true? I do you and have him on Facebook. I do you and have him on Twitter. I have him on no social media whatsoever. My Twitter private. Judge McBain reminded Larson of what happened when he previously appeared in his court. Warned you about. Last time I told you to just leave her alone. She was a classmate of yours. She apparently has no interest in. I want her to tell me to leave her alone. You know what I told you, to leave her alone. And apparently that did get through loud and clear. So today you going to jail for 3 days. The defendant then made a ridiculous claim. You and her, you know what? This is when Judge McBain became irate. You got a bad attitude. You had a bad attitude last time you were in court. You re-her our buddy. 45 days, county jail, okay. 93 days in the county jail. You want to go for a year? Try it, right now. One more word out of you. At LLB a year account over Facebook, BR 93 days in count. I never threatened, stand up. Cuff them, stand up buddy. Buddy more, stand up. You go into a jail for a year. In the county 365 days. County jail appealing after learning his fate. Lawson resisted arrest and made an aggressive move towards the victim. Put your hands behind your back now. I'll leave you alone. Tell me to leave you alone. Tell me right now. Put your hands behind your back. Put your hands behind your back, Jug. McBain sprang into action as Lawson got into a scuffle with a deputy. The judge removed his black robe and decided to help out Chaz's ass. Right applause. Now, put it down enough for you. All right, get you tea. Taz right now. Put your hands behind your back. We LL. Make it 93. You can think about it, all right? I am a good ka. Until. Me to leave you alone, me to leave you home. Even though Judge McBain initially went up to a year in the heat of the moment, once everything calmed down, Larson was sentenced to 93 days in prison. Jacob Larson got 90 days extra jail time for refusing to cooperate. How does it compare to lunging at a judge? Go like in the case of Melissa Hardwick, who was in a Kentucky courtroom for a domestic violence hearing. Hardwick's ex-husband had previously filed a domestic violence order against her. And are you asking the court to enter an order? Restrain the from any contact with Yeshua. The husband was explaining the situation when Hardwick started to interrupt. Things have been escalating, I guess, since the first of the year. And, Melissa has had a couple MWs and a couple, arrests. We hadn't really had anything personal up until that point. She got out of jail in April and she started. My personal life is business, nothing to do with Miss Hardno. You will be held in contempt to this court if you become disrupted. Care first, Judge Jennifer Edwards gave the defendant a warning, but Hardwick didn't care, so the judge charged her with contempt and sentenced her to 10 days in jail. I have undone anything to this court, have undone anything to him. She will be arrested for contempt of court. Differ, you will serve 10 days for contempt of court. This is when things got really crazy. You will serve 10 days for contempt court. Go now, get all of me. Hardwick leapfrogged and reached out to get her hands on Judge Edwards, but thankfully, court deputies stepped in just in time. However, that didn't stop Hardwick's verbal threats. Get my off, you'll be happen. Jennifer Hardwick faced additional criminal charges for her antics. Eventually, Hardwick was sentenced to 120 days in prison for her outburst, while Melissa Hardwick's attack was stopped in the nick of time. How does it compare to throwing a chair at the judge? We head to the Bartholomew County Court in Columbus, Indiana, where Jordan RHS is appearing for a probation violation today. RHS is pleading guilty in front of Judge Kathleen Koren, who proceeds to sentence the defendant to a year in prison. However, RHS was not pleased with the verdict and began cursing at the judge. Judge Corridon ordered Rhodes to be held in contempt and added 90 days to his sentence. This is when Rhodes decided to grab a seat for the judge. The first chair flew towards prosecutor Jeremy Fisk, narrowly missing him. The second chair landed at the court clerk's desk, smashing her computer. Everyone stepped back as ours kept bombing the judge's bench with a barrage of chairs before promptly leaving the courtroom and calmly surrendering to the deputies. Outside, ours was additionally charged with battery, resulting in injury to a public safety officer, and sentenced to 6 years in prison. 6 months later, RS was back in court after starting a fight with prison guards. This time, he took his anger out on the attorney's desk. Well, Jordan Rhodes clearly needs anger management classes. How does it compare to clocking your lawyer in the face? Oh, like in the case of Joseph Zier, who's on trial for double murder in Cape Coral, Florida, back in May 1990. 11-year-old Robin Cornell and her babysitter, Lisa's Story, were found assaulted and murdered at their home. The gruesome scene was discovered by Robin's mom, Jan Cornell, who called 911. House to my house, I think my daughter's dead. Oh my God, please hurry man, please just calm down. Oh my God, the case went cold for over 2 decades until Zier was arrested in 2016 for shooting and injuring his son Zal. DNA was collected and entered into the database, which matched DNA evidence from the 1990 crime scene. Zahler was further charged with 2 counts of capital murder. During the trial, the prosecution sought the death penalty. The kind of factors which makes what the defendant did to Robin Cornell and Lisa's story so grave, so serious, that death is the appropriate recommendation, that the appropriate sentence. Zier also took the stand, where he initially denied knowing both the victims and Jan Cornell. Do you know Jan Cornell? No, I don't. No, I don't. No, Jan Cornell. Do you know Lisa's story? No, do you know Rob Cornell? No, but Zier later claimed his DNA was at the crime scene because he and the victim Robin Cornell's mother Jan were involved in intimate acts the night before the murders, and what I believe happened is I slept with Jan Cornell and Lanedell. He even called the mother a pig, and they were just too much of a pig not to wash your sheets. Ziller then claimed that the prosecution was framing him. They actually took the sheet another sample and had another analyst do the same test. Did you hear that? Yeah, so the retesting was done. I believe FDLE is siding with the prosecution, of course. They were going to say that at one point during his testimony, Zier also seemed to flip off the courtroom camera. Eventually, the jury found Zier guilty of first-degree murder. We, the jury, find as follows: as to count one of the charge, the defendant is guilty of first-degree murder of Robin Cornell. We, the jury, find as follows: as to count two of the charge, the defendant is guilty of first-degree murder of Lisa Story. Despite his antics during the trial, what Zier did next left the whole courtroom stunned. All his sentencing, Zeller appeared in handcuffs. He then asked his attorney, Kevin Shirley, for a private discussion, as Shirley leaned in. Zier threw a cheap shot with his elbow. Thankfully, court deputies quickly subdued him. Meanwhile, Shirley saw the funny side of the incident. "Are you okay?" "I am fine. I am relaxed. I used to box. I've taken a lot better shots than that." After the dust settled, it was time for Zier to learn his fate. Court to conclude that the death penalty would be a proportionate sentence. In this case, therefore, the court concludes that under the laws of the state of Florida, the defendant has forfeited his right to live. Accordingly, it is ordered in a judge that the defendant, Joseph Adam Zier, is hereby sentenced to death for the murder of Robin Cornell and the murder of Lisa Storr. Ultimately, Zier was given the death penalty for the murders of Robin Cornell and Lisa Story, while Joseph Z's attack on his defense seems premeditated. How does it compare to using bodily fluids to show discontent, like in the case of Ricky Henwo S., facing multiple charges of robbery in Springfield, Ohio? Late one night in April 2016, the owner of John S. was preparing to end his shift. Unknown to him, his business was about to be targeted. 46-year-old Ricky Hand, a known career criminal, was about to rob John's drive-thru that night. However, the store owner was already armed and ready. After seeing Hand approach on security cameras, the man shot at Hand multiple times, and the perpetrator fled the scene. The owner then called 911 emergency. "Yeah, this is John S.'s drive-thru, West Main Street. A guy just tried to rob me and I shot him. He ran out the back door. Okay, is he injured? I think I hit him." Police arrived and traced Hands to a nearby hospital where he was arrested. Hand later confessed to the robbery attempt. "I did try to rob John. Sen got shot 3 times. I did the crime, even goingly. I just wanted to let." He also admitted his involvement in a series of other robberies. There have been probably a half a dozen or more robberies. Now you're looking at John. You're looking at this break into this beauty salon till I am done. I am going to prison for a long time. Well, you know that eventually Hand pleaded guilty to 7 robbery-related charges and was sentenced to 40 years in prison. Clearly expecting a lesser sentence, Hand put his disgusting plan into action. "Did you just give me 40? "Yes, sir. Yes, you just gave him 40 years. Well, guess what, sir? You got Yuka to play. Jesus and God, what's wrong with you?" Deathman, after learning his fate, proceeded to fling hidden pill bottles filled with feces and urine at his own lawyer before being detained by court officers due to his antics. Hand faced additional charges of harassment with bodily fluids, obstructing justice, and retaliation. Well, Ricky Hand's biohazard bomb left everyone stunned and disgusted. How does it compare to spitting on a judge like in the case of 30-year-old Bass Webb, who is on trial for attempted murder in Paris, Kentucky? CCTV footage outside of Kentucky jail showed Webb, a former inmate who spent 3 months there, intentionally hitting 2 prison workers with his car. While one guy managed to dodge it, the other was not so lucky. Webb was arrested and produced before Judge Vanessa Dixon can hear words say, "Yeah, that, yes, yes." Since she knew the two jail employees beforehand, Judge Dixon decided to recuse herself from the case. "No way. I'm going to try this case, or have any further proceedings, or I have to see you for one further." But what Webb did next shocked everyone next week. In an act of defiance, Webb spat on Judge Dixon, clearly taking her by surprise, after initially dismissing him. Dixon brought Webb back, charged him, and threw him out of her courtroom. Now, if that wasn't enough, 5 years later, another cold case came to haunt Webb. This time he was charged with the murder of another ex, Sabrina Vall. This time, Webb appeared in court with a sinister tattoo on his head. It had a murder hit list of all the people he intended to kill, including all judges, all prosecutors, all cops, the media, 3 rats that had been crossed out, and many more, despite his threatening tattoos. Webb was convicted again. You have found the defendant guilty of the offense of intentional murder. Ultimately, Webb was sentenced to life in prison, with the possibility of parole after 25 years, while base Webb's threatening tattoos certainly kept a few people up at night. What happens when a defendant gets attacked by the victim's mother, like in the case of Tevin Biles, Thomas, brother of Olympic gold medalist Simone Biles? He was accused of a triple homicide in Cleveland, Ohio on New Year's Eve 2018. Police arrived at an Airbnb rental after receiving a 911 call. Somebody just got shot at a party. Somebody just got shot at a party. 2 people did. Is there any serious betting? They both did, according to reports. A group of uninvited guests showed up at a party after being asked to leave. An argument ensued, and 24-year-old Biles allegedly opened fire on the group, killing 3 people. Biles was arrested and charged with murder, homicide, voluntary manslaughter, felonious assault, and perjury. His first trial ended in a mistrial after the jurors mistakenly saw legal briefs among the trial evidence. At his retrial, none of the 18 witnesses called by the state, including law enforcement officers, could positively identify Biles as the shooter. He was a first responder. He secured the scene and testified to the arrival of MZ. Did not identify any shooter. Her best recollection of the shooter is clothing is 75% accurate. A far cry from the compelling, persuasive evidence one would expect in a matter so tragic and serious. As a result, Judge Joan Seinberg acquitted Bill Ale on all charges for lack of sufficient evidence. In viewing the evidence in the light most favorable to the state, it is insufficient to sustain a conviction. The motion is granted as to all counts. This is when the courtroom erupted. I thank everyone for their effort, and my heart goes out to the families of the victims. We in recess after the case was dismissed. The mother of one of the victims lashed out in pain and anger and charged toward W.S. the defendant's Tibble. Thankfully, court deputies stepped in just in time. It took 3 officers to get the distraught woman under control. She faced no additional charges.